We started a journey in Basel. It's a Swiss city on the border to Germany and France. And it's the center of museums. We have more than 30 or 40 plus museums in Basel. And it's known for art, Art Basel. There are different fairs. And Roger Federer, correct. You see here the fair of Basel. That's most likely you have been in touch points with Basel. I got just rush through it. But what it is not known for, but most should be famous for, it's the center of the pharmaceutical industry. Has over 700 plus in the region, up to Freiburg and Strasbourg. And it's, if you work in pharma, biotech, you should have in Basel. So funnily, out of these 40 museums, nothing was talking about pharma. We decided to go for an industry exhibition. And I just show you some pictures from the outside. It's our campus. It's about 30 football fields. And we are into pharma. But pharma today is not what it used to be. I'm a pharmacist. What we studied last century was totally different. What we do today has been perceived as science fiction. Now, how do we explain what we do today? So we need to find a way to translate somehow the content. And that's happening in here, in this building. We go quick flight through. It's about a kind of a laboratory without being too cold, just to give you an insight, to get a glimpse into the before we get into the technical details. It's a 42 meters diameter building with a hole in the middle. It's about 1,000 square meters exhibition space with, we calculated yesterday, 90 plus stations, media touch points, and thousands, 10,000s of
media assets.
Yes.
Our industrial and academic partners. One example area of non-clinical safety assessment is the InnoMed.
And you see, we don't talk about drugs. There's no logo here. It's not about the products. It's about explaining what we do.
Should I use this? Does it matter? Can I just talk?
Works well.
Yeah. So my name's Nathan ORNICK. I was approached in 2019 by a company called iArt, which is a media architecture studio based in Basel, to help them develop the core technologies that would be used for building out the experience design within the Novartis Pavillon. A lot of people involved, but my background is as a producer from film, animation, games, a lot of communications content, advertising. So these are some of the that we've produced. We worked for Roland Garros, we've worked for Novartis, brand comms for insurance companies, because that's also quite a popular thing in Switzerland. But a lot of different kind of media content, games, interactive, edge gaming, technology, and of course in the last couple of years doing a lot of installations and experience design for museums and different brand spaces. So I'll just skip this. Yeah, so we've worked with a lot of different brands all over the world, and from fashion to finance, museums, amusement parks, FMCGs, all this kind of stuff, to deliver broad integrated solutions. In the case of Novartis, we had a consortium of partners. I mean, this is certainly not a one company show. We had iArt, which was responsible for a lot of the implementation and design. Atzer Bruckner was responsible for scenography. They're based out of Stuttgart. AMD Circle is the architecture firm. We had Eminus and Amplify Design, who did a lot of the content development. So there's a huge number of, I mean, this whole exhibition is really media and content driven. Tons of movies, tons of games, tons of interactive stuff, which came from these guys. And then there was me, of course, and I was responsible for the technology and user experience design, a lot of the reality tools, and integrating all of this content to make sure that it actually worked. So we had about 3 years of design and production, all in all. So we started in around, I mean, the building, of course, and the concept started earlier, but the real hands-on production started in 2019, and this opened to the public in April of 2022. Of course, working with Marcel very closely and carefully, and I don't know, I'll hand it to you to maybe talk a little bit about what's inside the pavilion.
Yes, so just imagine you're a pharma-driven company and you have to explain living. Without being too technical, but somehow in a way that and what you do, so we are thinking how we translate this. It's a translational journey. Being a pharmacist, that's what I learned, you are translating for patients. The dosage, the tablet, the regimen, whatever. So the same work was a bit to translate the content also in collaboration with technicians into something meaningful that you can experience. This is a core team that started before COVID. So we started to develop the content before the building was even built. So it was in parallel. The building was built at the same time. And no, this is... Okay. It was built at the same time while we were developing the content. What you see here are organic solar panels that I don't go too much into this. They are new. It's a different technology, but it's like a cell. Imagine this building is like a cell. A cell communicates with other cells. And so the whole building also communicates with society. That's kind of the visual door to the company. And being a museum, you have to show somehow what's happening inside. And these tiles, they are LEDs mounted by direct LEDs, so the whole building can shine and glow in the dark. And we use data to turn it into art on the roof, just to attract the people come in. What you see here are some of the details. I'll get into the details of the technology in a second. But you need a headset. Without a headset, the whole museum is not working. It's an interactive journey. And it's like silent disco. So you can have 3 schools in one point in time in there, you don't hear a sound. So it's from interactive screens to gamified screens to interactive screens. We get into this, and it all is triggered by Chile approaching the installation.
Yeah, and the content is didactic. It's set up in a couple different thematic zones. So you have an introductory film when you come in. Then there's a section of touch screens where you can learn about the human body, diseases, things that can go wrong, how the different systems in your body work.
And the last point in the future space, you touched on this, digital medicines. Medicines don't have to be something you swallow, you inject. Can perfectly prescribed app existing already. There are apps out there prescribed by doctors, paid by insurance companies. So we also get into the future of healthcare a bit to give a glimpse in possibilities. And this is just the roof at the end, what you can see when it's... Now, getting into the design, that's what you're here for, I guess.
Yeah, so as you can see, it's really a media-heavy exhibition, and it's a very audio-heavy exhibition. There are close to touch points throughout the space, and basically every single station has some sort of an audio component. It's also very media-dense, so you have some of these screens, for example, that are only 40 centimeters next to each other. So as we were kind of analyzing what the project requirements would be, we were looking at some of these challenges for the space, and we knew we wanted to build some sort of an audio guide system, but there wasn't anything on the market to check all the boxes for the challenges of this space. We also needed to interact with lots of different types of interactions, so it's not just playing audio content that has to be time synced to a movie. We have real-time UI sounds for games. We have show control systems for controlling DMX and lighting. We have physical encoders for objects that you can move around the space. We have different types of OS platforms that we need to communicate with and do time sync with, because I don't know if working with different computers, but getting everything to talk at the same time can be a challenge. So we have tablets that are connected over Wi-Fi. We have Vue and HTML touchscreens. We have Linux machines and Windows machines and Unity games. All this kind of stuff needed to work in a synchronized way. So, just clicking. Yeah, there we go. So we ultimately decided to build a brand new system from the ground up. We decided to build a tool that was XR as infrastructure. So there's not a single audio guide and there's no single media kiosk. Everything in this space is connected to one digital twin. And they're bi-directionally connected. So the users, as they move through the space, we built an ultra-wideband tracking system which has ultra-wideband antennas integrated into headphones, which we've engineered. We prepare the space with ultra-wideband antennas to basically create an indoor GPS system. We have around sub 10 centimeter accuracy. We also have IMUs that are integrated into the headset, so we can do head tracking. We know where people more or less are looking. And every media endpoint together can then have content that's triggered based on proximity. So if you walk up to a station, it knows who you are, it knows what language settings you have, it knows the journey that you've had at that point, and it can contextually display information. Also, because we have very high accuracy tracking and high accuracy head rotation, we can do spatial and binaural audio in real time. And so what that means is that we can anchor audio sources in a physical space. So it's not just like, there's some solutions, for example, that have Bluetooth triggers where, like beacons, for example. So it's a binary switch. If you go onto a space and you get nearby something, it turns on, and maybe you turn your head, but nothing is anchored. But here, you can have a sound source in the physical space, and as you walk away, it gets quieter, and you walk closer, and it gets louder. You can do really intelligent crossfading between all of these different media installations, and it makes it a really kind of intuitive space. You can also do simulation of room acoustics, reflections, reverbs, all of this kind of stuff, because it's basically like a video game, because you're interacting with the digital twin, but instead of using a controller and a screen, you're actually working through this digital space in the physical world. So these are some of the different interactions we have. This is a looking glass holographic screen. This is a map through the history of Basel. And it actually has encoders, so you can take the whole screen and move it around, and audio sources stay anchored to that screen as you move it through the space. There are some artifacts in the museum, but it's not really an artifact-based space. But for some of these artifact kiosks, there are also integrated screens. The lighting can change depending on what you are doing. If you get close to them, stuff turns on. And ultimately what we were trying to do is, how can we build a super techie system that doesn't feel like a super techie system, right? Because guests don't care about technology. We're serving a very, very wide variety of public guests. You have different types of age groups. You have kids all the way up to pensioners. You have some people who are very technically literate and some who are not. You have people with different languages, people with different disabilities. So we all of the tech magic into the back end, and we were very aggressive at minimizing the front end. So, if there's a lot of studies that show when people are working with content on their phone, the ability to retain information and process information is much lower. You get distracted, you're mode changing all the time, you're looking down and looking up. Google effect, where if something's on your phone, you think, oh, I don't really need to remember it because it's saved here so I can find it later. And so what we decided to do is, even though we have a very sophisticated and powerful phone and headset and all this tech that's on the user, UI is super minimal. There's not a lot of features and functions on the device on purpose, because we want people to pay attention to the space that's around them. Do I need to use the mic? Is this better?
Let's use this.
Or this? Is this better? Cool. So we wanted people to focus on the space that's around them. And what this actually means in terms of the user experience is you don't have any more friction you have with a traditional audio guide system. So normal audio guides, you might have a Bluetooth beacon, which maybe triggers something automatically, but most of them have some sort of conscious decision that a user has to make in order to engage with content. Type in a number, you have to scan an NFC code, you have to scan a QR code. So when you're moving through a space and you want to learn about what's there, especially for different types of visitors, you might have some people who just like to browse, right? And they may not actually want to stop and interact with every single thing. And maybe it's good and maybe it's not. But in this case, because all of the content happens automatically, you don't have to think about what you're doing. You move through the space, content plays. As you move away from it, that content fades away and the next content will come in. So it's a really, really frictionless space where you kind of forget that you're even using these kinds of technologies. So how does it work? So on the back end, we have a digital twin. We have a CMS that's pushing out all the content to all the different devices, and that's both the media endpoints and the individual user devices. We have a time sync server, which is connecting everything so that content can be played. That's one of the nice things as well, is that content can be played both synchronized and asynchronized to different visitors. So for example, when the visitors come into the space, there's a movie. Everyone should be listening to the same movie. It should be synchronized with that content. But as you move through the space, there, for example, is signage or different types of points where it might play just for you on your own time and not play the same with everyone else. So we can do that type of media distribution. And we also do a lot of analytics. So we're capturing a lot of the data and user behavior data, which feeds into our analytics and dashboards. Then in the kind of middleware layer, we have the ultra-wideband tracking and Wi-Fi and the different environment sensors. So that might be things like encoders. In Novartis, we didn't use things like depth cameras or IR cameras, video tracking, but these sorts of things can also be plugged in. And then for the user touch points, you have media endpoints, which might be games, which might be touchscreens, which might be areas that you've defined in the digital twin to say, like, when you are in this space, something happens, but there might not be any sort of visual reference to that in the real physical space. And we have show control. So this is things like talking to motors, DMX for life, these kinds of things, anything where you want physical motion in the space. And then the guests, of course, you have the headset and the smart badge. Smart badge is another way of interacting with the ultra-wideband for tracking. But in this case, it's not something you wear on your head, so it's a little bit more of a cost-effective solution. So a little bit of our development process. So we start with the basic high-level scenography idea. You know, what are the things that we want to communicate in this space? Then we take that and we start to do an engineering breakdown, defining all of the different, where do all the computers go? What are the power requirements? What are the heat requirements? Is there enough space for traffic to flow through here? These kinds of things. Then we start to build a digital twin of the space. So we start to define what the trigger zones are, where stuff can happen, and then that starts to be built out into a 3D space where we start to integrate the actual content, the real production technology, because it's running as a digital twin and it's all a networked system, and it ultimately is something that's going to be physically connected to a physical space. We can start to build those systems very, very early on as a prototype. Then we start to work with the architects and the previs artists and the scenographers to figure out what the space is supposed to look and feel like. And we build a high-resolution digital twin, usually built on BIM data from the architects. And then we bring that into a game engine. So this was built way before the physical space was actually available. But we built this Unity application, multiplayer Unity application, which ran on web and on VR, so that all of the people who were involved in the production, from client to designers to media production teams, could all explore this space together, see if stuff worked, interact with the different media stations, see if flows worked, and basically have a shared collab workspace, which was also super, super useful because this was in 2020, more or less, which was, you know, middle of COVID. So we could do a lot of stuff separated. This was a very useful tool. So this was some of the original shared VR space that we had. So yeah, you can move around and actually interact with stuff. That moves, of course, into physical prototyping, so starting to build out the screens, check that the tracking actually works. We started off with some commercial ultra-wideband tracking pucks, but you know, these have their own batteries, they have their own proprietary systems, and ultimately we ended up engineering our own. This was built on a tool from, from a headset from III, which is a Danish headset manufacturer. So we basically took their headphones and stripped them down and then repacked them with all of our own tech. The nice thing about working with them is that all of the components are modular. So when you're working in a space that has a lot of guests and eventually things get dropped and things get broken and things, from a sustainability point, it's very easy to work with these kinds of tools. Stress testing in space. As I mentioned before, we have 200 devices that we can run simultaneously. And yeah, we ended up with a very sleek, sophisticated system. So that's a little bit of the process of what we built and why, and I'll let Marcel maybe talk a bit about the results.
So we opened about 3.5 years so far. We had 300,000 visitors in the building. Remember, it's a 42 diameter. It's not that massive. And 70,000 of them went to the exhibition. Using the headset, and this means also gearing up the headset, taking it back, cleaning it, and, sorry.
There's real
Now
numbers.
here.
Yeah.
Okay. And the duration is about 6. We measure everything when people start their journey, when they go back, how long they stay at the station, how much they consume at the station. So it's interesting for us also, is it really consumed? Is it working? 63 is the duration they stay in average in the exhibition. And that's not too bad. Think about, you can close your eyes, but not your ears. So it's very intense. You have to walk through. You cannot just stop. It's continuing. You walk to the next space and it starts again. So 63 minutes is much more than what we hoped for. And that's the average. Yes, that's a journey of one example, of one visitor, for example, to the round space, but you want to elaborate on
An example of some of the data that we can capture, so we can look at, look at behavior of individual guests or individual users. So this is the one took and where they walked, but we also can look at, for example, heat maps, so we can see user behavior over time. You know, where do people actually conglomerate? So in this case, you can see everyone is hanging out at the initial film because people come in and they stay there for a couple minutes. But this can be useful for thinking about how to change and optimize the design. Maybe we would want to switch out content, for example. Maybe we need to change the signage or the lighting if we see that people are, avoiding certain installations, things like that.
So here we also have the numbers of how much they consume, how many times it was triggered, how long do they stay at the station, do they see 80%, 90%, 10%, and you see the visitors by hour and weekday, so you can also plan a bit the hosts who are gearing you up with the headsets. It's a Monday or Tuesday or Sunday, day. And so far, open 3.5 years down the road, we managed to win quite a number of prizes for design. Also, IF Award, the Red Dot Awards for the roof, for the content, for the inside lighting, the space, won an award. So it was quite a journey. Yes, you want? I don't know. Okay. Feedback, of course, some people don't like it. They say it's too techy. Others say you could see it on YouTube. We had very good feedback. Surprisingly good. I mean, we have been very quiet about the opening. We said this happened. Nobody had a museum like this, and it's an industry museum. It's an industry exhibition. A bit of a fear that people are very critical, but in fact, it was astonishing how positively the society took this on. I think it's also because it's simple. What we saw also was the younger generation, they want to touch every screen, whereas the older generation, they don't dare to touch a screen. So the user behaviors are different from age 12 plus to not between plus 12 and 99. So sometimes you have to, depending on the group, have somebody explaining them really how to use or not to use something. But overall, not one iPad got lost, not one installation really broken by vandalism. So this is really, the society takes on this kind of exhibitions. Next. That's you.
Yeah, this was just maybe a couple comments on some of the things that we learned. When we're building experiences with these kinds of tools and technologies, it really helps if you're working with the scenographers and experienced designers from a very early stage. If you're coming in later and you're just like, hey, we can put a XR layer on, or we can do this sort of extra audio stuff, you're not really taking advantage of all of the things that it allows you to do. So it really helps to start early. And yeah, Marcel mentioned earlier today when we were chatting, always buy 10% extra hardware.
Yes. LEDs, screens, 3 years down the road, you don't find the same screen anymore. And you build this screen into a certain way into the wood, and so 10% is the rule of thumb. Put it in the cellar just in case.
We'll wrap it up? Okay. Yeah, so yeah, these were just some of the other, I'll let that play out. These were just some of the other installations that we've done. The Novartis Pavillon is not the only museum that's actually running this. We have multiple permanent and temporary exhibitions that are running at various museums and brand spaces. So I'd be very happy to show them to you guys after the presentation. And the contacts for Marcel and I are both through this QR code. Feel free to reach out. And if you happen to be in Basel, I'm sure either one of us would be very happy to welcome you to the pavilion.